Hello everyone, welcome to the Tristar Gym channel. Today's episode I'm answering your questions. This is another AMA video. Ask me anything. If you guys want to send in your questions, there's an email below. I believe it's Zahabi mailbag. I'm not sure even, but I will get you that email address posted at the bottom. These questions are selected at random. So if you want a question answered, just send it to that email and I'll do my best to get to it. Today I'm answering 5 questions. I want to hop right in. Before I do that, I'm going to take 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds just to thank the channel sponsors. Number one sponsor is timtam.tech. They make the world's best deep tissue therapy device. If you train, you want to keep your body healthy, check out this device. Second sponsor is defensetech.co, not .com. Okay, some of you have been emailing or asking why .com is not the site. It's .co, defensetech.co. Everything defense, hidden cameras, hidden knives, pepper spray, etc. $100 if you spend $100, shipping is free. Okay, shipping is free if you spend $100. XPN Nutrition, and of course Reebok. Okay, Reebok, thank you for sponsoring the channel. Let's hop into it, and I want to get to the questions right away. Don't want to spend too much time talking about sponsors, so let's hop into it. First question is from Vincent. Vincent asks, I really enjoy your channel, etc., etc. What is your take on Rickson Gracie's statement about loyalty and training in different academies? Is loyalty and family more important than improvement and knowledge? Vincent, I'm including the link to the statement of your video. I'll also try to plug it into the description if I can remember. I'll put it in the description. I checked your video out. Interesting stuff. Rickson talks about it's not good to go to other academies, multiple academies. You come into the academy, we teach you, we train you, we give you love, we give you knowledge, and then you go represent some other guy, which I totally understand what he's saying. And you're asking me, is loyalty more important than knowledge? Well, I'll tell you, I think there's a yes and no. I think there needs to be a compromise between the student and the master and the teacher. Some instructors are very territorial, extremely territorial, and I think that's just crazy. And I think it reflects a lot of insecurity. And some instructors are too free, too open, and I think that reflects their lack of value. They don't value themselves. They think that why should they ask anybody to stay? They have no value. They have no authority over anyone, and their game or their knowledge is just as good as everyone else. Now, before I get into finding a happy medium, I first want to discuss the pros and cons. You know, when somebody comes into your dojo and you teach them everything you know, they can use that knowledge to represent you, or they can use that knowledge to show it to your competitors. And then your competitors know what you know, and they also know what they know, and now you've become obsolete. That's the fear of an instructor, that you're going to go represent someone else, that you're going to share the knowledge with someone else, and then they'll have an edge over our academy. And this is a very understandable concern. You think countries teach each other their technologies? They just hand over their technologies. Hey, come in and invade us, come in and destroy us, make our technology obsolete, become superior to us. Nobody wants their competitors or neighbors or rival to have the ability to step all over them, okay? So it's very important to understand where your instructor is coming from. And I'm very sensitive to that because I've trained with many instructors. I've had the privilege, I've trained with so many great martial artists. I've had such a great privilege, and balancing out the egos and the conflict of interest is a very important part in your development. So you should pay close attention to this video because this could be a roadblock to your development. And you're right. The improvement and knowledge is super important, and one person cannot teach you everything. And so, for example, let's say you want to learn leg locks, but your academy doesn't allow leg locks. Well, you'll never learn leg locks, and then you go into a tournament where there's leg locks, and boom, you get subbed really quick. You're mystified. You have no idea what happened, and you don't even know the first step to escape these holds. What are you gonna do? Are you just gonna keep, are you gonna stay ignorant? Are you just gonna completely not know what to do with leg locks? What if, your instructor's game is just not for you? You've been training with him for 5 years and you realize, hey, I'm not a butterfly guard player. I have more success with inverted guard or de la Hiva or rubber guard. That's more my game. And there are teams out there that specialize in these guards. Should you break free? Should you follow the footsteps of your master? Or should you break free and do what's best for you? I think if you were to, think of a simple thought experiment. If Rousimar Palhares, for instance, trained under Marcelo Garcia, he was a Marcelo Garcia student, there would be a point where where Paul Harris would realize, hey, leg locks work for me, and butterfly guard is not as good for me. I'm not as good as with butterfly guard. And he would not do as well, in my opinion, if he tried butterfly guard in UFC as opposed to his leg lock system. And that would hold true for Marcelo. If Marcelo tried to be a leg lock guy, I don't think he would be as successful as being a butterfly guard man. You know, and guillotine guy, he's got the short, stocky arms. Guillotine, arm in guillotines don't make sense for him. Arm out guillotines, high elbow guillotines make sense for him. So I think there is an important decision to make once you get to the higher belts. From white belt to blue belt, you can probably train with anybody. You're going to get better and better. But there's a point, there's a sticking point. You know, once you reach purple belt, once you've been training for 5 years, now it's time to really focus your martial arts to suit you. You know, you've learned the basic arm bars, you learned the basic takedowns, you learned the basic blocking the punches. You know, now what style are you going to fight? Which style are you going to use? Are you going to be a guy who fights with his hands down? Are you going to be a guy who fights moving forward? Are you going to be a guy who's a guard passer? Are you going to be a guy who goes for guillotines above all? Are you going to be, you know, a De La Riva guy? Are you going to be a close guard guy? These are questions you're going to have to answer after about, I would say, 5 years. You're hitting the advanced level. You know, you're becoming more and more seasoned. What style are you going to use? And that's the time where you got to decide if you're going to stay with your instructor or not. Now, I'm very liberal. I like my students to go to different places. However, I don't like my students to go next door. You know, if you go next door, you're directly competing with me. I give my students some academies where they can train outside of Tristar. So, for instance, we have a wrestling club. We have we go to John Danaher's Hensel Gracie the Hensel Gracie Academy. We train a lot with John Danaher. We go to Phil Nurse's in New York. So I send guys in different gyms. You know, we just had we have a lot of successful grapplers at Tristar Gym. They compete just in grappling, not just in MMA. And they go to the Hensel Gracie Academy. Of course, you know, going to the Hensel Gracie Academy, it's one of the best places in the world you can train. You get everything you need, and it's okay. It's good to give your students those different type of flavors where those academies are associated with us. They're not direct competitors, and we have an understanding with each other. We have an affiliation with each other. And that understanding is super important because it kind of finds the middle ground between the instructor and the student. The student can try different styles. He can train with different people. However, he's not directly competing with you later on. And for those people who train 2 weeks at one place and 2 weeks at another, then 1 month at one place, I'll tell you something. Instructors are not going to show you everything they know. They're going to give you the periphery. You know, they're going to let you sit in a class. They're going to teach you some stuff, but they're not going to get in detail, and they're not going to go out of their way to perfect your game and connect your game. If you don't represent them, it's human nature. Why would I spend so much time building you when I have students that represent me and I could build them and myself together in unison? So I think there has to be a happy middle. Some instructors are super territorial. In my opinion, get away. You know, if you get in there and they're like, buy my t-shirt, wear my, put this bumper sticker on. If I see you post anything other than praising the school 24 hours a day, if your teacher walks up to you and say, hey, why didn't you post about our practice? Why didn't you post? You got to get away from that guy. Those guys, in my opinion, 9 times out of 10 are bad news. Even if the academy's good and they're winning, that cultic type thinking that it's too deep, it's too hardcore. You're going to get married. You don't want to get married. You want to train. You want to have fun. You want to be there because you want to be there. You want to post because you want to post. You know, my academy, I don't want to compare with other academies, but my academy, you wear what you want to wear. You want to buy a TriStar t-shirt, you buy a TriStar t-shirt. You want to buy a Reebok t-shirt, buy a Reebok t-shirt. You want to buy Adidas, you want to buy whatever you want to buy. You wear it. However, obviously, you can't wear a t-shirt that's our competitor directly. You can't go train with us and train with them and show our game to our competitors. Why? Is it because of an ego thing? Well, no, it's a conflict of interest. The athletes I'm training are going to be upset that some guy comes in, gets to see what they're doing, then goes reports to their competitors, trains with them, and then on competition night, my students have a disadvantage. You know, it's a conflict of interest for my students. So I tell people when they come in, hey, listen, you can come try, a week or two. If you're not going to stay and you're training at the academy next door, you can't come back here anymore. It's just the way it is. I got to protect my interest the interest of my athletes. However, being overly territorial, overly cultic, in my opinion, is a waste of time and energy. You can't force people to want to be with you, because at the end, you're going to spend all this energy trying to keep them with you, and then they're just going to leave anyway. You know, at one point, they're going to be like, hey, I got to get away from this. This is just too much of a restrictive relationship. You know, and when the new fad comes along, when Kimura is really hot, or guillotines are really hot, and that's not your game, those guys are going to defect. And when they do, it's going to be such a big deal. Whereas academies that are more open have a more open door policy. A guy leaves for a month, comes back. He comes back. He realized the grass is not greener on the other side, and he comes back, and then he's the best student you ever had. He's the most loyal student because he's been around. That's happened to me quite a bit. You know, guys leave. They think, you know, they come in for a year. They think, hey, let me try another club, and then they come in and they stay for 10. They stay for the rest of their career. Why? They realize that the grass is not greener on the other side. I really believe my academy is one of the best in the world. There's a handful of academies the way we have at Tristar, with so many high level elite martial artists all in one place. And you can learn anything from grappling, striking, and jiu-jitsu and wrestling at the highest level, high level of instruction. Go ahead, try the next door. You're going to come right back here anyway. So I think your confidence will reflect how liberal you are. But at the same time, you can't take it too far. You can't allow the student to take it too far, because it's a conflict of interest for your existing students. I wouldn't want to train in an academy that trains the guy I'm going to fight. You know, you can't train the guy if my instructor is training the guy I'm going to fight, I'm not going to be happy with my instructor. And that's essentially what you're doing if your open door policy is too open door. Okay. I think there needs to be a trial period. Let people try your academy if they want to, because they're not going to learn your entire curriculum in 1 week. Let them in for a week. It's not a big deal. Let them in for 1 week. If they can learn everything you have to teach in 1 week, you don't got much to teach. Okay, so if the guy comes in for a week, tell your students the guy's trying it out for a week. If he comes back, he's got to join the club, or he can train with our affiliates. You know, I use Carl Pravec quite a bit. He's a Silver Fox BJJ. Great jiu-jitsu, very different style than what I teach. I bring him in periodically. My students get a different look, a different expert telling you how to do things a different way. And some people love that style, and they gravitate to it, and they get a chance to explore. So I don't believe in putting the blinders on my students. You know, give them a chance to explore. Do it in a way that's controlled. You know, I like to bring in guys to do seminars, etc. I bring in black belts to do seminars, wrestlers to do seminars, judokas, boxers, whatever. And when they do a seminar, we all get a different look. I sit in as a student. So try to find an instructor that has at least some flexibility. According to Hickson has no flexibility. You train with me or you train with no one. And I would accept that if I was a student, but I would probably choose not to be his student. I would choose not to be a student because I think it's too restrictive. All right, hope that answers your question. Next one here. This one's from Joshua. Joshua wants to know, it's quite a bit of a long message here. He wants to know, what's the best striking style? Being elusive, throwing lots of side kicks and jabs and moving around a lot, or more planting your feet and being, more like a tank, etc., moving more forward explosively. Thank you, Joshua, for your question and your kind words. It all depends on your attributes. If you got an iron chin, incredible power, and incredible durability, move forward, fight with pressure. I really think people make too much about style. Styles is important, but the level is number one. I don't care if you give me a guy who fights like Conor McGregor, or a guy who fights like Mike Tyson coming forward. I don't care. What's their level? What level are they operating at? That's what matters first. Secondary is the style. The secondary thing is style. Styles clash, absolutely. Some fighters have trouble with southpaws. Some fighters have trouble with wrestlers. Some fighters have trouble with guillotiners. Their neck is not. They're suckers for guillotines. I've seen that. I've seen guys who are horrible at leg locks. Just their ankles are so brittle and stiff. If you squeeze their ankle, they scream and tap. And some guys you can squeeze their ankle all day long, and they don't tap. So if you get stiff ankles, don't be a leg lock guy. Don't try to play leg lock games. Because you're very open and susceptible. So number one is level. What's your level? Just because a fancy footwork guy moving around wins a fight doesn't mean his style is what won him the fight. It's his level that won him the fight. You look at Wonder Boy. People think it's his style. His style is great. It works for him. Not everybody fights that way. A great example of this is, look at Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz fights in such a unique way Do any of his teammates fight that way? No. Are they crazy? They haven't tried it? Of course they have. I'm sure everybody in Cruz's gym, they walk in there and like, hey, that guy's the champ. That guy does really well. Look at what he's doing. Let me try to ask him a tip or two. Hey, I tried it out. I'm doing what he does, but it doesn't work for me. You know, I'm sure that a lot of his teammates went through this process. They're not stupid and thinking, hey, all that he's doing with his footwork and head movement, it's all useless. He understands the style. It works for him. Now, is it because they didn't understand it? You think that every guy who's ever trained with Dominic Cruz didn't understand his style? Or is it just something that works for his body type, his personality? And some people laugh, oh, what does your personality have to do with fighting? Listen, if you're the type of guy who's scared of getting hit, you're not gonna fight like a Almeida, compact Thomas Almeida, walk forward. You're not gonna fight like that. Your personality does shine a lot. Like Renzo Gracie, for instance, he has a very charismatic, aggressive personality. His jiu-jitsu is very different than Royce's. Royce is very laid back and relaxed and chill. And Hickson's he has a surgical mind. You see, his jiu-jitsu is very surgical. Your personality manifests itself in your fighting style. Absolutely. The guys who are hotheads fight like hotheads. The guys who are very intelligent, they fight very methodically, etc. Your personality does. If you ask a hothead to fight like a methodical, using a methodical style, if you give him all these details and all these steps, he can't handle that. He's not listening to you. You got to let fighters fight the way they feel comfortable. And not every fighter is going to be a methodical or an elusive fighter. Focus on your level. How high is your level? A great example of this concept is in boxing. You look at boxing, a sport that's been around forever. It's super refined. There's been countless boxing fights. How many guys have become world champion with a different style? It's unbelievable. Some guys fight with one hand down. Some guys fight with two hands up. Some guys fight one hand stretched out, one hand over here. Some guys Muhammad Ali never threw a body shot. Never threw a body shot. I think he's thrown like 2 body shots in his entire career. He didn't use body shots. Why? His level was super high and the style fit for him. I don't want to get into the Muhammad Ali, but obviously he was circling the wrong way according to boxing, the boxing book. He's always circling to his left. He's a righty. It's supposed to be wrong. I think at a certain point you got to throw the book out. You got to throw the rules book out and just do things your way. After a certain period of training, once you become advanced. So my question to you is, what style do you like best? Have you experimented with both? And don't worry so much about style. It has to do more with level. Go sparring next week. Try to fight like Wonder Boy. It might not work for you. You might get crushed. You don't have the level, and maybe that style doesn't work for you. Okay, so there's 2 criteria you got to juggle, consider, think about that, and I think it'll make more sense to you. A great example was Lando Vimola's last fight. He was fighting a guy who was very orthodox striking. And 2 different styles, very same level, very close to. And David won, but did he win with Vimola's style? No, he won with his style, but the levels were equal, or, one was higher than the other. But styles are they're more about correlation. It's not cause and effect. It's a tricky thing to equate. People get confused. They see one style winning, like Machida style won for a certain while. And then, it's the best style. And all of a sudden, it's not winning anymore. It's not the best style. Well, one, it was novel. It was new. People didn't understand it. Once we recognize the patterns, human beings, we're all about patterns. Once we understand your patterns, it's not so mysterious anymore, Have somebody show you a magic trick that really wows you. Have the guy explain it to you how it works. And then when he shows it to you again, you're bored out of your mind. You know what he's doing. It's no longer mystical. It's no longer mysterious and mind blowing. Now it's just obvious, right? So level is number 1. 2 is style. Okay, that's my answer to you. Next question here. Am I over time? I'm not even sure anymore. Let me see here. Let me get past these questions. Okay, this question is from KJ Arton. Thank you for your videos. If you have 1 hour with a person and you want to teach that person self-defense, what would you focus on? Sharky from Norway. Thank you, Sharky, for your question. If I have 1 hour with somebody, what do I teach them for self-defense? Wow, that's a good question. Number one, you can't learn self-defense in an hour, but if I had only 1 hour, I would teach them to keep their chin down, shoulders up, hands up, and how to move their head. If I have an hour, how to move their feet, be an elusive target, and I would throw them just to throw across, like a right hand. That's all I would do. How to block, chin down, hands up, shoulders, footwork, head movement, and how to throw that punch. Obviously, you can teach them to grapple in an hour, but they're not going to know anything. So you might as well go for the puncher's chance. Go for that puncher's chance. Hide that chin. Teach them to move around. I think you could do that in an hour quite easily and throw one punch. You got time to teach them one punch, and that overhand right, I think, is the best punch for a beginner to throw if he wants to have a chance to defend himself. Next one here is from... I went the wrong way. Hi, Coach Zahabi. This is from Quinton. My name is Quinton. I'm 37 years old. I keep fit, but never did any martial arts. My question is it too late for me to do jiu-jitsu or martial arts in general? No, it's not. 37 is young. I'm 37. Okay, so yes, I started a long time ago jiu-jitsu, okay, but the body's an incredible machine. I've answered this question before, but I'm going to take it on a total different path right now. The body is an incredible machine. So is the mind. But some people convince themselves every day that they can't do something. They wake up in the morning and they tell themselves, I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't do this. And they convince themselves so much that they can't do something. And maybe they have a surrounding of people who tell them they can't do something, they can't do something, they can't do something, and they can't do. And then that thing is so easy to do. But in your mind, you can't do it. You'll never do it. You're crippled. Your mind is crippled. And that's the word I use. You might find that insulting. I'm not trying to insult anybody at all. I just think it's a crippling way to live. You can do it. It's physics and then your beliefs. Okay? If it's physically possible, then the only thing standing in your way is your beliefs. If I don't care how wishful, how well you understand The Secret, the book The Secret. I love that book. People bring up that book to me all the time. I don't care how much you visualize. Your mind is nothing without the body and the physics. Okay, I get that. But if it's physically possible to get fit at 37, which is obviously ludicrous. If anybody tells you it's physically impossible, that's ludicrous. It's absurd. It's never too late. Then it's only your mind in the way. It is physically possible to learn jiu-jitsu at 37. It is physically possible to be fit from the age of 37 and up. Absolutely physically possible. So what's left? It's your mind. So I hope that answers your question. I hope you don't let anybody or anything stand in your way. The truth of the matter is, if you're overweight, and I hate to give it to you this way, if you're overweight and you're out of shape, the problem is here. You're mentally weak. Unless you have a disease of some sort. Okay, for sure. If you have a disease, some people do have a disease. For 2% of the population, diet and exercise doesn't work. They have disease, ailments, hormonal problems, etc. However, everything else, 98% of us, let's make it 95. It's your mind in the way. Your mind is weak. It's a manifestation of your weak thoughts. You have to convince yourself every day that I'm going to make it one way or another, or I'm going to die trying. One way or another. I'm going to find success one way or another. I'm going to get fit one way or another. And that soldier in there has got to work every day, and he's got to march every day, and you got to train him every day, and you got to build up his strength. You can't go from mentally broken to mentally fierce. You build it. And there are a lot of ways to build it. Self-talk, teaching yourself to reframe things, seeing things in a different light, reading biographies of people who had a hard time in life and made it, hearing the stories of other people who had the same problems you had and made it. And just, stick to the positive. And you know what? You'll make it. And it's funny because when people make it, they look back at their journey and they're like, it wasn't that hard. But before they make it across to the other side, they think, oh, it's so impossible. I remember when I was teaching my son to ride a bike and he was telling me, I can't do it. And he said it like 3-4 times. And I said, well, you know what? We're not leaving here until you do it. So I don't care if we have to sleep in the park. He's like really shocked. I'm like, yeah, well, we have no other choice. And he was like 4 years old, 5 years old. Obviously, I wouldn't make him sleep in the park, but I wanted him to realize that we are committed to this. We are committed to this. And I was just trying to teach him a lesson that Because I see this all the time. I've trained thousands of people. Some people come in and they're locked to their excuse. They're locked to it. And, you got to burn the bridge behind them sometimes. You got to burn the bridge. You hear that old fable where an army goes to the shores and the general burns the ships. It's either we win this war or we die, because there's just the ocean now. There's no more boats. There's no exit. And I think it could be a very dangerous thing. Obviously, I wouldn't do that to an extreme level, but there is a gem there. There is a kernel of truth. So sometimes I jokingly tell my students, my younger ones, oh, well, if you don't get it right, we're just going to get our sleeping bags. We're going to sleep here, and then we're going to wake up really early tomorrow. I'm talking about sleeping in the gym, and we're going to drill that move. And if we can't do it then, we're not going to sleep the next night. We're just going to do, and then you see their mind shift. They're like, wait a second. I might as well just get this right now. I'll get it correct right now. We don't have to sleep in the gym. I joke around with them. Oh, we have gruel for breakfast. It's like oatmeal without the flavor. Gruel. You never heard of gruel? Oh, gruel. You never heard of gruel? That's all we serve in the morning here at Tristar. And I kind of joke around with them, and they realize, you know what? Let me just do this right. And in 5 minutes, they're doing it right. They went from I can't to I can. And I remember when I was teaching my son to ride a bike, I told him, we'll just sleep in the park. We'll live here until you can ride a bike. Maybe when you're 10 years old, if we live here for 5 years or 6 years, whatever it was, you'll finally be able to ride that bike. We'll just live in the park. We'll be one of those people who live in the park. And sure enough, a few minutes later, he was riding that bike. He was pedaling. And I reminded him, you remember you said you couldn't do it, and then you won't be able to, and you didn't want to do it. And he's like, yeah, that was easy, Dad. I was wrong. It was easy. And I've had this experience so many times in my life. People think something is so hard, and sometimes it is hard, but a lot of times it's not. Some things are hard. I don't want to say some things are not hard. That's not true. Some things in life are really hard to do. 1% of people are going to be successful. 99% are going to fail. But some things are super easy. Just look at the statistics, Getting your driver's license, pretty easy. I would say I don't have any hard statistics. But I would say 90% of people get their license, over 90%. So well over. So why wouldn't you get it? It should be easy. If everybody's doing it, it's easy. So my advice to you, millions of people are in shape and they're 37. Lots of people got in shape in their 40s, etc. I don't have any hard statistics for you, but I've seen it. I've had a lot of experience with it. It's not hard. It's just your mind in the way. Get your mind right. Get your mind strong. Train 3 to 5 times a week. Build up a tolerance to training. Ramp up your training. Take your breaks when you need to. Find a good diet book written by a PhD or a medical doctor at least, a nutritionist at least. Try to stay away from fat diets. Get something really credible. Eat natural foods. And find a diet that works for you. Find a training regimen that works for you. Find something that you love to do on a regular basis in terms of fitness. And anytime you have a negative thought, just crush it, man. Destroy it. Obliterate it. Hear my voice telling you that it's a lie and that you're a fool if you believe it. And that you're taking the easy way out if you believe it. Okay, get your mind right. The thoughts in your head are so important. They're so powerful. I also did a video on how to be fit for life. Google that, okay? YouTube it. What was it called again? I can't remember. How to be fit for life or something. Just put in Tristar Gym Fitness and it'll come up. I did 2 videos on that. Okay, listen to both of them. And if you're not fit, the problem was up here, my friend. Okay, I think this is the last one. Or did I do them all? Okay, here we go. This one's from Daniel. I really like watching your Q&As. Thank you for the great free value. So my question is, what do you recommend in order to become more flexible for BJJ and kickboxing? As well, what fitness routine is best for getting stronger in combat sports? Well, when it comes to flexibility, I'm a big believer in dynamic flexibility. So what's dynamic flexibility? Do a quick little YouTube search, but it's when you jump up in the air and do the splits. It's power-based. It's explosive-based. Why? Because you don't want to be... Static stretching is good for after practice. Okay, why? Because static stretching puts your muscle to sleep. So do you want to stretch your muscle, put it to sleep, and then work out? No, you don't want to do that. Okay, you want to activate your muscle. You want to bring blood flow. You want to bring heat to the muscle. Okay, you want to create heat in the body, yes, but you also want to turn on your nervous system. Okay, so if I jump up and do the split squat, star jump, if I jump and split my legs in the air, You know, like you guys seen Basrun do it. If I do 10 in a row, my heart's gonna be beating, my heart rate is, my heat is coming up, the body's warmed up, and I'm high alert. You know, my nervous system is turned on. Now I'm ready for practice. And there's a lot of things you could do dynamic. Lots. I mean, it never ends. Above all, I like mobility. Your joints are supposed to move in a certain way, in a certain range. You have to maintain that. If you don't maintain that, it becomes a domino effect of BS you don't want to live. Okay, so let's say, for instance, your vertebrae in your lower back are a little bit tight. Okay, they lost some range. Well, that affects the range of the thoracic spine, and that affects the range of the neck. So the joints below, once they're not as mobile, they affect not as mobile or as stable. They affect all the joints on top. It's kind of like Jenga. You know, do you pull the block from the bottom? No, that'll make the whole thing fall. You pull the block kind of from, you know, higher up as possible. Your joints have to be either, some joints are known to be stable and some joints are known to be mobile. Okay, so I don't want to get too deep into this, but your joints need to be stable and mobile. Some are, like for instance, your knee, you don't stretch your knee. Your knee is supposed to be stable, stable, stable. Most people have 100% mobility in their knee already and they never stretched a day in their life. Okay, so of course there are tests. You go see a physio, he'll tell you if your knee is normal or not. But your ankle has to be mobile. Your hip has to be mobile. Your thoracic spine, according to Stuart McGill, PhD Stuart McGill, he says your lumbar spine, not your thoracic spine, your lumbar has to be very stable and a certain minimal amount of flexibility. He says people who are overly flexible in the lumbar spine have back problems. If you're overly flexible. So he says certain joints, you don't want to stretch them too far. You don't want to make them overly mobile. You want to keep them really strong and stable and always aligned. Some joints, you want to increase their mobility. Like for instance, your shoulder has to be supremely mobile. If you're not able to lift your arm over your head like this, you know, don't go do Jiu-Jitsu because your arm's going to snap off eventually. You're eventually going to do this in a quick motion while as you're rolling, and your shoulder is going to be in a range that it's not trained to be in or hasn't been in a long time, and you'll injure yourself. So one joint affects another, and there is a standard for how mobile joints should be. So if you're not in that standard, don't train. If you are in that standard, do dynamic flexibility before training, static flexibility after training. That's what I recommend. I'm not a big believer in stretching. I'm a much bigger believer in mobility. There is a difference. Mobility is about putting your joint in a position and moving it around. Okay, there's an element of motion because I'm never gonna be in. It's rare I'm gonna be in a fight and I'm gonna need to stretch my arm really deep behind my back and just leave it there. No. I need to be able to create motion in these pretzel positions. You know, so if I'm in a tight triangle and I'm trying to escape or whatnot, I need to be able to wiggle out. I need to be able to create I need that mobility. It's not just static. Fighting is not static. So mobility is stretching plus motion. You know, we need that motion. Okay, so even better than that is stretching plus motion plus strength. You know, then you kind of have gymnastics. You know, so I like gymnastics myself. I hope that answers your question. I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a bonus. Okay, just a little bit of a bonus. I'm gonna comment on the Chris Weidman fight, Musashi fight. I was thinking about doing a whole video on it, but it was a short fight. A great fight, by the way. I thought it was two hungry lions fighting. You know, it was a phenomenal fight. But the knee at the end, when I saw it live the first time, I thought it was 100% legal. I understand the new rules. For those of you who are not aware of the new rules, how it was explained to me in the locker room, and I thought it was crazy when I first heard the rules. I'm like, there's an accident waiting to happen. This is an absurd rule. Before it was if you have one hand down on the mat, you're a downed opponent. If you're touching the mat with your finger, you're a downed opponent. Now they said one hand is not enough, you have to have two hands. And then the referee, and I was in the back room of UFC, he's explaining this to me. He said, if you don't have pressure on your hands, you have two hands on the mat, but there's not a lot of pressure on them, the knee is legal. Don't play that cat and mouse game where you put your hands, take them off, put your hands. That's what they're trying to eliminate. You're about to get kneed, but you put your hand on the mat just to avoid the knee. So they were really, the refs were, the people were complaining about that. So now they're like, not only do you have to have two hands, but you have to have pressure. Now, pressure is very ambiguous. How much pressure? How many square inches? How many pounds of square inch? How do you measure that? How could you discern if there was pressure or not? You know, this is going to be very ambiguous. Now, when you look at that fight, Weidman had his two hands on the mat. Musashi seemed to lift him up and knee, but there wasn't any pressure on his hands. That's why I thought, okay, whether he was touching or not, there wasn't much pressure. You know, if it was very light. So the rule made sense to me at that point. Like when I saw it, I was like, oh, it kind of makes sense now. I could tell that was definitely not touching or not a lot of pressure. But I still think that, after a few hundred fights, that rule, it seemed to work out. Like for me, it worked out in my head. It worked out fine. For the referee, it didn't. For the referee, thought it was illegal. Then he went to the tape, etc. You guys know what happened. And Musashi's declared the winner. It's not declared a no contest. It's declared a legal knee, and it declared that Weidman was not able to continue. Now, my big problem with that is if Weidman wasn't told it was illegal, I think he would have continued. Because he would have had his mind in that place where, look, I'm gonna fight to the death here. And when you get hit with an illegal knee, and they tell you got 5 minutes, you take that time to process, hey, what just happened? Where am I in this fight? Your instincts are no longer operating. Your cognitive mind is now back online. And you're thinking, oh, wait, okay, I got knee in the head. Let me take my time. Where am I? Where's my energy levels? You start to think you're in your head. But if you got kneed in the head and the referee let the action go, who knows what would have happened? I'm not telling you I know what would have happened. Excuse me. It did look like Musashi was taking over at that point, but fights seesaw back and forth all the time. You can't say that the fight is over at that moment. That's just crazy to me. That's just crazy. Now, I love Musashi. I think he's a great fighter, and I love Chris Weidman. And this is a great fight, but the ending, the rule, too confusing. It made sense for me right then when I was watching it. I thought it was perfectly legal, but I could see how a referee can get it wrong. And if I feel if that happened 10 times, I would get it wrong at least half the time. 2 hands on the mat should be illegal or illegal, regardless of amount of pressure. That's too vague. And now I don't know if they've reworded it, but when they told me this rule change, I'll tell you guys a true story. They told me about this rule change while I was in the locker room, and they told me now it's 2 hands pressure, and I was like, is that in effect yet? And they're like, oh, hold on, I'm not sure. The referee wasn't sure. He asked the commissioners, and they said, no, that rule's not in effect yet. I think it was until January. They were telling me the rules in the locker room, and they weren't even sure. The refs weren't even sure about the rules. So they had to make an adjustment. And again, we were a little bit confused. They straightened it up. It was clear as day that the rules are not in effect yet, but those are coming. Because we were talking about the rule changes. And we're like, hey, no, they're not in effect yet. So now that was the fight, the Weidman-Musashi fight. It was in effect. It's been in effect for a while, okay? But it's the first time the scenario actually happened that I've seen. I'm sure it's happened maybe before. I haven't watched all the fights since the rule change. And I thought it was legal, but I could see how you could see it the other way too. I could see how mistakes are going to happen. They got to change that rule. Let me know in the comments what you guys think is a better rule. I think if you're touching the ground, you can't get kneed. Whether it's 1 hand or 2, make up your mind. But take out this pressure rule. If there's not a lot of pressure, you can't knee the guy. Is there contact or not? That's the only thing that we can discern. When my opponent throws the knee and he connects with my head, did he throw the knee and my hands were on the mat and he lifted me after the fact? So your hands are on the mat, I throw the knee didn't hit yet, and your hands come off the mat and I connect. Was that illegal? Or I have to wait for your hands to be off the mat for me to even throw a knee. Confusing, So let me know in the description what you guys think. I'm interested. Again, the rules are really, they need refinement. They're not perfect, but they're really good. UFC has done a great job of implementing very good rules that allow entertainment. They do a great job. The commission's done a great job, doing what they can, because the sport is new. It's not like boxing where there's been countless fights. MMA is relatively still new in the mainstream. I think they've done a great job. This is just one of those, we got to split hairs. And we gotta refine the sport even further. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for tuning in as usual, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you.